All right, we've got our cap all sewn together here, ready to be turned right side out, and I'm going to clip at the curved spots so that when we flip it right side out, it's going to, the seam is going to lay nice and flat inside. And this part will be inside of the casing once we flip it around. So I pull it sometimes just to make sure we've got them all those cut where they need to be. And then there's that opening at the front edge. That is where we're going to turn it. So that's really all you needed to do to prepare it to be turned. And I put my thumb into the hole and then, push it back through and turn it right side out. And once it's turned right side out, you're going to tuck the black part inside and lay it over the end of your ironing board. And then what works best, I believe, is to just keep kind of taking your fingers and rolling the edge. Of course, you've got that hole there where you turned it right side out. You want to make sure that that stays nice and straight and even with the edge, with the 1/4 inch seam tucked in the right amount, doesn't bulge out or normally bulging out is the problem. You just have to make sure that that lays flat and even with the rest of the edge. Now I'm coming down here where that corner is. That's where that ribbon is going to be stuck in. And you can put your finger in there and kind of pull it out. Sometimes I'll use a tool to pull it out, but that looks pretty square. And just rolling that edge. The top right now is the front edge. Okay. So here you can see how nice and flat it is. And of course, I have to check again, make sure everything's nice and smooth and even, and it looks like it is. Okay, now we're going to come around the other side. We've got the same thing where we're going to be pulling that fabric out through the hole. Now this side I had a little more trouble with, so I'm trying to get it out to where it's square, and honestly it probably wouldn't matter that much. But I kept working at it till it was square. Rolling that front edge with my other hand while I'm pressing this. Just rolling it. This little iron is great, by the way. It's Steam Fast. I got it on Amazon. All right, so now there are the two front corners. I'm holding both of them at the same time, but I'm obviously using that seam ripper. It's bugging me that isn't quite square, but it looks good now. Then you bring your iron around and press the bottom edge. This will be our elastic casing. Trim off that little nasty little thread there. Okay, so your cap is ready to be top stitched, to have the elastic casing and the ribbon stitched on. So there's the hole where the ribbon will go. And there's the edge of that hole. I'm putting a pin there to mark the edge of the hole because that is where our elastic casing will start. You're going to stitch around 1/8 of an inch along the edge. That's our first step. So putting right where that pin is, you're going to stitch 1/8 of an inch from the edge, and that reinforces the edge of the elastic casing. As that seam gets some wear and tear on the, against your neck and with the elastic stretching when you put it on and all. So just reinforcing that edge is a good idea. And back tack there. And then we're doing the same thing, but this time it'll be a good 1/2 inch away from the edge. And I try to keep it consistently 1/2 inch away from the edge when you sew the second one. You don't want it to get so narrow that your elastic's going to have a hard time getting through, or your safety pin or your needle if you're using a yarn needle to bring the elastic through. Okay, so here, I think I'm a 1/2 inch. It might be just a little over a 1/2 inch away, looking at my markings there on my machine. So just make sure you keep it out where it needs to be so it doesn't get too narrow. and back tack it. Trim all your threads, and you'll be able to see where that casing is. So that is a casing ready for your elastic. Now I've got elastic that I have tied onto a plastic yarn needle, and that's what I use to thread my elastic through. A safety pin will work as well. A little bit larger one is less likely to be a problem or spring open. Bring it through the other end. Out the other hole. And I'm grabbing the end of that elastic with my thumb and forefinger. See, I'm holding on to it because I don't want it to get away from me. So, and I have a long piece on there because I make a number of these, so I just keep that threaded up with elastic. But now on the end, you just hang on to it until you know, see, I'm holding it with my left hand so it doesn't pull through. Then I loosened up a little bit and let it pull back in to right there. So there's the end of your casing, and the elastic is just sticking out past it a little bit. Just making sure it's all pretty flat in there, laying flat. I'm pulling, stretching, moving the fabric down, kind of evening it out along the elastic. And that looks about right. The reason I don't give you an exact measurement here necessarily is that all the elastics are different. Some are tighter, some are looser. You want to put it in there and see what it feels like. I mean, I'm at about 3 inches of, a little over 3 inches from one end to the other of the casing. But it may be that yours needs to be a little bigger than that or smaller. And also maybe you have a ponytail that's going to be sticking out and you want more room for it. I've found now that I've made a few of these caps that I prefer approximately a 4-inch measurement. And I snipped the elastic. See, I kind of stretched it and snipped it off a little bit. So now I take the ribbon about a 1/2 inch from where my thumbnail is, you see, and put it in. And you got to wiggle it around, make sure it gets around that elastic and doesn't bunch up, because that piece of elastic is in there. And I open, you can see the elastic. So it has to get by that. So I'm a 1/2 inch in there, and now pin it. And on the other end, 1/2 inch from the end, push it in, and that one slid right in. Pin it. Okay, now what you're going to be doing is we're going to be stitching from here where the elastic ends, and then come across the ribbon, and we're going to do a little X pattern on the ribbon, and then go around the front, back up, and do the same thing on the other side. All right, so we're going to start here at the end of the casing, put the needle in, slowly walk it across over the pin. You don't want to take that pin out or your elastic will snap back. So now we walked over the elastic, over the pin, and now we're back tacking, and we'll do a couple more times just to make sure that elastic is held well. About 1/8 of an inch there from the edge. And we're going to stitch over and across through the ribbon. And now we're going to do an X pattern. Kind of reminds me of what you see on the door of a barn. So you're coming across, and then rather than turn the whole thing around, you can just reverse at an angle. All right, so you've just created kind of a V pattern. Now you're coming down straight, back, and then angle it back up to the other corner. I didn't quite get it. I didn't hit this back corner quite right. And when you do that, you can just lift up the presser foot, lift up the needle, lift the presser foot, put it back down, and then you can stitch back along that edge. It's fudging a little, but it really looks fine. You can see here. You can see how I moved it over there up at the top of the, kind of the top of the X, but it looks fine. And now we're going to stitch all the way around the front edge of the cap, 1/8 of an inch from the edge. And then it comes all the way around to the other ribbon. Make sure it ends up 1/8 of an inch. Oop, a little too close, backed it up. Okay, so about 1/8 of an inch from the edge again, come across the ribbon. And then angle back. Straight down. See if we can get the angle back a little better this time. I don't think I do though. I think I'm still off. Doesn't quite hit it. No, not quite. But I got up to that 1/8 inch seam there and then scooted over a little bit. And it works out. Looks great. All right, so now we're coming back across the top of the ribbon, down, and we're going to close off that casing and stitch up the elastic. Now here I'm thinking, well, I might be not quite far enough down to get a good grip on that or a good bite on that elastic. A couple more stitches and we know the elastic is there. I have done this before where I've stitched it and all of a sudden the elastic snapped back when I pulled the pin out. So you want to be sure that you've got the elastic sticking down far enough that you get a good grab on it. Okay, pull it off, snip it, and your cap is finished. Just snip all the threads, and you're finished. There it is, black side with the contrasting fabric along the edge. Or you can flip it over and have the print side with the opposite fabric. The black fabric here along the edge. Good job.